say hello for those who we've met, but for those who haven't, I am Robin Scott, one of the commercial managers at Peak. So just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. You'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat function and also a Q&A widget. If you have any questions at all during the webinar, please feel free to submit these and we'll answer these at the end. So brilliant. We'll get started. So the agenda for today, it'll start with myself. I'll give an introduction to the topic and the death of the third-party cookie. We'll then be joined by Maya Knights, who's Head of Industry and Insight at Eagle-i. Maya has over 20 years experience as a journalist, editor and publisher and research director specialising in enterprise technology use in marketing and retail. Maya's also co-authored 2 best-selling books, Amazon and Omnichannel Retail, of which the latter she has co-wrote with Tim Mason, CEO and formerly the Tesco Deputy CEO of Eagle-i Solutions. And for the panel discussion today, we'll also be joined alongside Maya with Matt Wheeler, CEO and founder of DriftRock. So Matt has actually helped brands such as BMW, VW and Honda to grow business through effective Facebook advertising. Matt has over 15 years experience helping leading OEMs scale their digital marketing efforts and growth whilst leveraging the DriftRock platform to manage, analyse and use their first party data to deploy lifecycle marketing. So we'll get going. So before we get kicked off, I'm just going to explain a little bit more about our Masters Event AI series. So the series is focusing on the real world applications of AI to business leaders. It's run by AI experts and aimed at business professionals rather than tech experts or data scientists. Masters of AI is about taking a straightforward, practical and understandable approach to AI in business. So one of the aim of the events is to build an exciting new community, so that's you guys, who are forward-thinking, innovative business leaders who understand that putting data at the heart of their business strategy will help them set up for long-term success. So at this point, I just want to remind you, if you've got any questions, please do submit them through the Q&A below. So we're here today to talk about the death of the third-party cookie and what that might mean for you. And earlier this year, Google Chrome announced a 2-year wind down of the third-party cookie tracking on its hugely popular browser. And we're here today to discuss what that means to marketers, publishers and technology businesses. But I think it's good to firstly recap on what third-party cookies have been useful for today. So third-party cookies are allowing advertising networks to track users across the internet. And it's this what enables marketers to reach and influence audiences based on their online behaviour, which is resulting in better, tailored and more relevant ads. But this is all going to change. And by 2022, the users that you may now see across the web will no longer be tracked and measured by third-party cookies. And what will essentially happen to this audience is it will go dark. So overall, this will have a knock-on impact on how users can actually be targeted and also how your campaigns today can be measured. But although they have been fundamental for how the digital landscape looks today, they've also been subject to a lot of scrutiny. And this is mainly in relation to privacy. And with the introduction of GDPR in 2018, by law now, users have to have more control of their data and how that's being used. But by the very nature of how third-party cookies are and how they track and how they actually function, this can actually be very, very difficult. And we'll share a little bit more on this later in the webinar today. Okay, so what does this mean for the future of online advertising? Well, it means that you will need to find clever new ways of how to identify audiences. And the best way to do that is by utilising first-party data. So you can build a more direct relationship with your customers and sort of move away from any sort of reliance you might have on third-party cookies today to kind of eliminate the impact of that. But, to successfully do that, you need to have a first-party data strategy and good first-party data. And we're going to talk about, again, later in the webinar, about different ways in which you can engage with audiences and start to collect that first-party data, but also do that when it's consented as well. So you're in line and sort of compliant with GDPR regulations. Measurement is going to become more of a challenge. So we'll also talk about, again, different ways in which you can start to track the online journey much more effectively through different means. But also something to consider is that potentially the cost of media is going to rise. So every penny spent or every media dollar invested really does need to count. And in order to do that, you will need to have more intelligent and sort of optimized ways of making sure that your campaigns are a success. As a result of this, loyalty is going to become much more important. And it's no surprise that as a fallout of the pandemic, consumers are behaving very differently, both offline and online. And having the ability to connect the dots and tie up that customer journey is going to become even more important. And this is also going to help you with measurement, but also give you the means in order to collect more robust first-party data. But with that, loyalty on its own isn't enough, and the battle for attention is only going to get harder as brands are having to move to this more effective first-party data strategy. You're going to have to make sure that your loyalty scheme actually counts. And what I mean by that, it has to be much, much more than just a scheme. And rewards programs or loyalty shouldn't just be a means of data collection or a means of retention. It needs to be powered by intelligence so you can deliver more effective and more efficient personalization to your consumers and those people who are members of that loyalty scheme. So the key is utilising first-party data to deliver this one-to-one personalisation. And there's various different examples in ways you can do that. And it's great today that we're joined by Eagle Eye, because they have some great examples of how effective that can be, and the sort of creative ways in which you can achieve that as well. But for that one-to-one personalisation, you ultimately need a single view of your customers, and essentially know ahead of time what those customers are in market for. And this will absolutely set you apart from the competition. If you know ahead of time what offers should be shared, but also at what price, so you're not only delivering personalisation, but you're also protecting your margin as well. So I'm going to touch on now on how artificial intelligence can help you execute that strategy and improve your loyalty program. So now I'd like to talk about how artificial intelligence can help really power the one-to-one personalization with your customers. So for many of you actually listening today, AI will be a term you hear a lot, but there is proof that when correctly applied to specific business outcomes and, built in a way that it can deliver the metrics what actually matter for your business, AI and machine learning together are incredibly powerful tools. And what it should set out to do is ultimately increase your revenues and protect your profit margins for those customers, whether that's new customer acquisition or that's your existing customer, in terms of driving loyalty and taking those one-time purchases into repeat customers. But the problem a lot of businesses face when it comes to AI is that, data can be incredibly complex. It's often stuck in various disparate systems within a business, and you'll probably know more than most that there's a multitude of MarTech solutions out there which will collect data, but actually joining the dots and bringing that all together is a challenge. So having all this data accessible in one place will help you regain control of your customer data and actually be able to reap the benefits of what AI actually offers. So the great thing about machine learning is that based on historical data you have, it can then predict what the best next action is for each customer. Now I'd like to talk about a specific customer story where they've actually taken this approach with AI. So for those of you who don't know, Foot Asylum are a multi-channel retailer with over 65 stores in the UK. And when they started with Peak, they wanted a data-first approach so they could tie up their customer journey across all channels. And Tom Summerfield, who's our Director of Retail at Peak today, actually previously worked at Foot Asylum. And he understood that by unifying data all in one place and having this unified view meant they had segments available to them which they could use to power their email and also their social campaigns. And the results of that, of these AI-powered segments and these predictive segments, actually saw Foot Asylum improve their campaign revenue by 28% for email, and also saw an 8,400% increase on ROAS for their social campaigns.
Perfect.
And this just emphasizes, this just emphasizes the importance of, when powering loyalty, that understanding exactly who your customers are and be able to predict when they're in market and when, will just really join the dots of how you can continue to drive new customers and new customer acquisition, but also ensure that you improve the profitability of your existing customer base, taking those less loyal customers to become your most loyal. So in conclusion to that, having a data-first approach like Foot Asylum can help you become more resilient, understand exactly when your customers are in market for what, and also prepare you for drastic times as we are now today with the pandemic, to react much more quickly to what your customers want, and ensure that you can maintain that loyalty. And what we're going to talk about now with Maya Knights is all about how we can connect that journey through the power of technology, and also how that can benefit when coupled with AI. Okay, so thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me today. It's now time for me to introduce Maya Knights, who is Head of Industry and Insight at Eagle-i. So Maya, I will hand the reins over to you to tell us a little bit more about the death of the cookie and Eagle-i in general.
Thanks, Robin. Yes, hello everybody. As Robin mentioned, I'm here as part of the Peak Masters of AI webinar series to talk to you about the death of the third-party cookie. As Robin said, my name's Maya Knights. I'm Head of Industry Insight at Eagle-i, which is a digital marketing software company whose mission is to enable businesses to establish one-to-one relationships with their customers. To do this, we believe you have to transform your marketing for a digital world and bridge not only online to online customer journeys, but those that occur online and offline as well. That way, you can acquire, interact, and retain customers whenever and wherever they engage with you. Eagle-i Air, the platform, powers digitally enabled and data-driven customer insight and value. So that's why we're here today. We're here today to answer your questions, as much as to offer insight into the implications of the death of the third-party cookie for marketers, advertisers, and publishers, as well as to look at the options open to them. So please do, as Robin said, use the chat box to submit your questions, and we'll be having a panel discussion at the end to answer some of them. Once we examine what the issues are, we can then explore the consequences and options, including why intelligent engagement is emerging as the best choice. Then, as I said, we'll be turning to our panel of practitioners who can discuss how digital marketing and AI specifically can help bridge that gap between online as well as offline sales. We're here because the goalposts on what you can and can't track online keep moving for so many of the stakeholders in the network that Eagle-i Air enables. For years, cookies have been used to track website visitors, improve the user experience, and collect data to help target ads to the right audiences. They're also used to learn about what visitors are doing online, even when they aren't necessarily on your websites. But that began to change when data privacy really began to capture customer attention in 2018 with the introduction of GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU. GDPR addresses the transfer of personal data outside of the EU and mandates that website owners ask visitors to opt in to privacy-related tracking and consent policies. Then, the way we use cookies began to change, with Google's announcement that it will phase out the third-party cookie on Chrome browsers by 2022. This is important because although Chrome isn't the first browser to phase out the third-party cookie, it is the biggest. For example, in late 2019, Google Chrome made up more than 56% of the web browser market, and it also accounts for more than half of all global web traffic. So what are the implications for advertisers and publishers? Although Safari and Firefox come in a distant second and third place in terms of browser market share respectively, the industry has already adapted to the fact that they have blocked third-party cookies since 2013. So these changes won't come as a complete surprise. Google also says that its changes will happen over the course of 2 years. And Google isn't banning all cookies because it's working with tech companies and advertisers to ensure that this change doesn't actually kill the online advertising business. The bottom line is that if you're just aiming to track your website visitors' behaviors, preferences, and basic demographics only while they're on your website, you probably won't be deeply impacted by this change. However, if you're a marketer that relies on robust data for online advertising, pop-up ads, or a pinpointed audience targeting strategy, you'll need to continue to follow the news around this phase out and consider alternative first-party strategies. A first-party cookie is a code that gets generated and stored on your website visitor's computer by default when they visit your website. This cookie is often used for user experience as it's responsible for remembering passwords and basic data about the customer, the visitor, and other preferences. With a first-party cookie, you can learn about what a user did while visiting your website, see how often they visit it, and gain other basic analytics that you can help to develop or automate an effective marketing strategy. That includes the number of pages people click on during a visit, browser types, geographical demographics, or even referring websites where visitors clicked a link to your site's URL. However, you can't see data related to your visitors' behavior on other websites that aren't affiliated with your domain. So this is where first-party data really starts to become important. Google announced, in line with the phasing out of third-party cookies, that it was developing a privacy sandbox, described as a secure environment for personalization that also protects users' privacy. The tools being developed as part of the sandbox are being designed to allow marketers to continue to publish and circulate ads to the right audiences without having the same amount of user data acquired by third-party cookies. This is why we say Google, Facebook et al. Are raising the data drawbridge. Similarly, on this topic, Facebook has introduced people-based advertising, which relies on a unique identifier that is related to the user, not the device. This approach to marketing automation relies on first-party based targeting to ensure persistent cross-device recognition for a single view of the customer. This single view of the customer is becoming absolutely crucial. The impact has also opened up the opportunity for innovation, both online and offline, wherever customers choose to engage. For example, last year, a dozen UK publishers met with the IAB's Tech Lab to figure out a solution to the expected impact on ad targeting and real-time programmatic bidding within the open marketplace because of the phasing out of third-party cookies. One solution being tested is by data management platform provider Permutive, and they are looking at the use of context to map various audience strategies on the open marketplace. Their segments would be created using publishers' first-party data. The principle is similar, actually, to what Google is proposing with its federated learning of cohorts framework, which also relies on machine learning to study the browsing habits of groups of similar users and will feature as part of its privacy sandbox solution development. So, opening up the potential for online and offline innovation, I think you can see just from those couple of last examples there, is something that advertisers and publishers must factor into the implications of the offline cookie. When we look at the consequences and options, without Chrome-based third-party data, cookie data, you'll still be able to target and use Google Ads, which will be powered by Chrome's first-party cookies and their privacy sandbox tools. However, it has to be said that some ad software and platforms that rely on third-party data will undoubtedly take a huge hit without support from Chrome. So it begs to quote the question, while Google's move is designed to improve privacy for the end user, some have questioned whether it is also designed to monopolize the ad market by forcing the adoption of Chrome's own first-party cookie and thereby diverting third-party platform spend to Google's own bottom line. Either way, we've already mentioned using other opted-in first-party audiences through integrations to the likes of Facebook for Business and other social media network advertising tools. But a consideration here is that they may increase the publisher's CPMs, that's cost per thousand advertising impressions, and divert more budget into those walled gardens of Google, Facebook, and others. As already mentioned, some data management platforms are now looking to create alternative tools that help advertisers track data in a way that makes the most out of the third-party cookie by applying the use of context to map various audience segments on the open marketplace. This includes the IAB Tech Lab example I highlighted a moment ago. But another arguably more powerful source of innovation is emerging around the way we collect and use customer data. One interesting approach I'd like to highlight here is the shift to cookies-based behavioral targeting to keyword or keyword contextual-based advertising. What that means is with contextual targeting, the ads viewed are based on the content viewed instead of overall behavioral profiles. The move to contextual marketing is welcome as far as I'm concerned, because it will mean a move back towards focusing on producing and distributing timely and relevant content. However, as previously discussed, first-party cookies will give you more control over your data. So prioritizing first-party data acquisition strategies will require a level of consumer trust and a reason or perceived value to be recognized. Which brings us on to the importance of intelligent engagement. So even if you have consumer trust and you have consented first-party data, what's the problem? Well, big data, including customer data from multiple touchpoints, is great, but only if you know what to do with it. So get a handle on that data. Many businesses have disparate systems and data silos that make it incredibly difficult to deliver sufficient value from this most intelligent, valuable asset. This is why we see so many retailers forging online connections to customers through digital and e-commerce, and then tying that back to a customer identity associated with a sale. Most importantly, being here as a guest of Peak, it is technology and AI that is bridging that gap between the customer journey tracking and sales, both online and offline. Online, for example, Eagle Eye recently collaborated with a number of different tech providers and hospitality venue operators to power the UK's Grand Outdoor Summer Cafe as a key workers promotion to help hospitality venues post-lockdown. And we're proud to say that we were shortlisted for a Hospitality Lockdown Heroes Award. The campaign encourages customers of merchant operators to raise money towards vouchers for frontline workers via Eagle Eye's audience network partnership with the UK public discount scheme Blue Light Card. Unique vouchers issued by the Air platform can be redeemed in real time using contactless payment systems in participating venues. In doing so, in using such examples, it's possible to acquire more first-party data through personalised offers and rewards. For example, Pret a Manger is using such systems to track a journey straight through to a sale. It's using the Eagle Eye Air platform as part of its foundation for its digital transformation with its pioneering new coffee subscription service, Your Barista, which you might have seen in the press recently. Built on the Air digital marketing platform as part of Pret's new digital infrastructure, its new in-shop digital service capability will allow it to launch insight-led customer propositions more quickly and at scale. We also work with companies as diverse as Trade Doubler, Groupon, and retailers such as Asda, JD Sports, Pets at Home, and Greggs to build a better picture of their customers and apply data science to gain a single customer view. Most importantly, in doing so, they understand that this is what it takes to win, and you have to have a connected ecosystem to do so. This is why partners like Peak and our Dial methodology, which is the operating model for a data-driven approach to customer relationships, come in. In doing so, you can understand the potential savings in giving away only what's essential, and you can develop more effective advertising and marketing return on investment. So Air is so important because it connects this entire ecosystem. I mean, we're the connection guys, which means that with us, we connect to clients and partners and help them connect to their own consumers. Without our clients, partners, we don't have a business. But most importantly, for the purposes of this discussion, we connect to hundreds of other third-party channels that aren't owned by our merchant advertising clients, but enable us to connect them with other audiences through sites like Voucher Codes, Unidays, and Groupon. We also connect with media agencies to run brand campaigns and gift card wars like Blackhawk Network. Then there are the client comms owned channels that could be email, SMS, marketing platform automation providers like Salesforce, CRM providers, even in-venue Wi-Fi and HR systems. These are important for ingesting the data that comes from client interactions back into your own system so that they can be intelligently analysed. And of course, part of the offline connection is provided by the point of sale vendors, where we connect with them to enable our clients to connect with their customers at the point of sale, both in-store and online. There are also a number of technology partners that we work with, spanning integration partners as the ones you can see here, and specialists such as DriftRock, the lead generation platform that's designed to help you grow your business through social and search advertising, and whose CEO Matt is joining us for the panel discussion today. Last but not least, we also integrate to a number of data systems, including financial reporting systems such as SAP, and have a number of data partners who our clients use for either data management or storage, and of course for detailed analytics and AI capabilities, including our partners Peak, who play a vital role enabling the effective execution of that dial methodology I shared with you to overcome the death of third-party cookies and much, much more. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and hand over to Robin for our panel and Q&A discussion.
Thank you very much, Maya. That was really interesting. I think absolutely bridging that gap between the online and offline is absolutely key and essential for multi-channel retailers, and I think resonate a lot with some of the people who've joined us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Maya. That was incredibly insightful, and I think we've got a really powerful view on how people can start to maximise their first party data. But now we're moving on to the panel discussion, and joining us today will be Matt Wheeler, who is CEO of DriftRock. And just as a recap, Matt has helped brands such as BMW, VW and Honda to grow their business through effective digital advertising and marketing. So hello, Matt. Welcome to the panel today.
Hey, thanks very much for having me along.
No worries. Great to have you. So, Matt, I think first off, to kind of kick off, we'd love to hear from you about how DriftRock leverages first-party data for its customers. And really, can you tell us your secret of what you do, what your secret sauce is?
Sure, yeah. I think we're kind of in a very fortunate position at DriftRock. Our whole company mission and ethos has been around helping use data in a privacy safe way to deliver great marketing experiences, and for us that means we're essentially a lead generation platform. We help capture customer data, and we help do that in a way. So lead gen's great because you can kind of you can ask for all the adequate consent and all those things up front, be very transparent with the customer. So we've been in quite a fortunate position that we're kind of riding this this wave of helping brands do that in their marketing. And we've been able to work with some of these larger companies, transform through this process of GDPR and now into this kind of third-party cookie dying off as well.
Wonderful. I think that's a very important point you make there about privacy safe. I think it's quite a serious topic in terms of the sort of digital marketing space today. So I suppose how do you address that? Do you kind of take your customers on a journey of almost kind of going through how they're collecting their data? Is that a part of what you can offer and do in terms of consulting the best ways to capture that first party data and consent?
Yeah, I think in general, our advice and my advice to marketers is this is kind of just this is, I guess, the third party cookie dying off is one of many parts of this privacy backlash we're seeing, and I think my opinion is rightly so as well. That the third party cookie has been one of those things that's been somewhat abused for some profiling and ad targeting things that maybe it shouldn't have done. And I think so now our advice really is to this is just another step in that evolution as a marketer, and you've got to kind of think outside the box and how you can deal with that. I think for us that the biggest piece of advice here is to own your own data and build relationships and connections with your own customers, rather than kind of renting the audiences of the ad platforms and ad networks who have got that data. So that's our kind of number one piece of advice. And then I think all sorts of other things to consider in terms of how your web experiences, your marketing strategy, your data strategy, all of that's going to evolve as the cookie changes. So really kind of thinking about the end-to-end customer experience rather than just specific parts.
With that in mind as well, Matt, so I suppose for those listening today who might be thinking, okay, I've not got my first party data like as I'd like it to be, or based on what I've heard today, I need to make some changes. What would your advice be for those listening of how they can get started with Drift.rock?
I think Drift.rock or any other Drift.rock is going to helps with one part of that, which might be lead gen. But I think on the bigger picture thing, I think most of the time when we're talking to marketers, that people don't really know where to start and haven't, like you said, got even going with this thing. And I think if you think about traditional e-commerce, for example, you've got websites which are open, you can browse them like a catalog, and you can make purchases normally without having to log in. These kind of things need to maybe be rethought. Like maybe you should ask for logins up front so that you can start to build your own database, that you can personalize the experience for the customer, but you can be very transparent about the consent and why you're asking for these things, so that you can give the customer a better experience. So kind of rethinking your online presence, rethinking your offline presence. You've got when you go into an Apple store, you provide your Apple details when you're in store as well, and those kind of connecting that, and Eagle Eye's playing a huge role in that, which is really exciting. So I think it starts. I think probably the number one thing is to start somewhere, and that normally means a form of data exchange, customer data exchange with consent, and then doing some bringing all that data together. Is a job for this a whole load of professionals like yourselves at the Peak and database solutions, which you can bring that together with.
Eagle Eye likes to think of itself as almost like a cookie in the offline to online world, and our cookies are in the form of some kind of value. It can be any non-monetary transactional type of value, so that could be rewards, it could be a promotion in terms of money off or early access to something, but anything that you can actually attach a code to. So I would say, in order to get started with boosting your first party data, first of all, look at what it is you're offering your customer in return for them identifying themselves and giving them information about themselves. It need not necessarily have a monetary value, but I think by turning it into a transactional engagement, one, you stay on the right side of privacy ethics. You're being really transparent to the customer that I'm giving you something in order to get your identity, to get more information about you that I will then hopefully try to use to improve your experience, which I think is the standard cookie declaration at the moment anyway, isn't it? But actually attach some value to that, and then to be able to track that through to a sale. So we can work with any businesses' existing marketing and promotional plans, and just be able to add that traceability, that attribution, and introduce them to partners like Drift.rock, who can then work with us to make sure that offer, that whatever it might be, that reason to identify is sent to the right people at the right time via the right channels. And then we're kind of we're not the brain. I would describe Peak as the brain, where with the transactional layer, Driftrock is the execution layer, and you guys are the brain that sits at the back. So we kind of pass the data between you as the brain at Peak and Driftrock as the execution engine. But in doing so, by coming to us, we can kind of tie together all of those bits, but also focus mine strategically on what it is that I want to understand about my customers, and what is it that I'm willing to exchange in return for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've discussed today, and Maya mentioned earlier, obviously, the sort of clear benefits really in collaboration of tech businesses and digital marketing platforms and the whole ecosystem, essentially, of how we can bring that together. So I suppose what I'd like to sort of delve into a little bit more is just about your partnership with Eagle Eye and how you do work together and how that's benefiting your clients ultimately.
Yeah, I think that's it's a really good point in that there is no. I think there is no one size fits all in one marketing tech platform that can solve these problems. I think there's some companies that are trying to do that, like your Salesforce and Adobe's, but actually I think really you have to have this this collaboration in place in a safe way, rather than with how you handle the data between vendors. But you have to be able to bring that together in order to deliver a seamless experience for the customer across the journey, basically. So yeah, with Eagle Eye, that for us, that's where Driftrock plays a role, is we can help customers issue coupons via a lead generation format. We can help activate some really exciting channels like YouTube or Facebook and LinkedIn, those kind of Snap, and all these kind of interesting places where consumers are hanging out, and then bringing that together with the offline world through Eagle Eye is where the two pieces of the puzzle come together. So that's where we've done work, and we're certainly seeing, especially since GDPR and now the cookie dying off, a huge inbound interest for companies maybe that we didn't expect, who previously weren't really in that customer data world, who are coming to us and asking for help on that. So yeah, it's an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, so as you mentioned there, Matt, in your opinion, obviously there's some verticals or specific businesses where it was a bit of a shock or a surprise that they traditionally haven't taken that approach to sort of customer data. Who has been that sort of shock for you, or who has surprised you? And can you sort of share about the types of businesses you're speaking to?
Yeah, sure. And so for us, a lot of our world is what you'd expect in terms of companies who generate leads. So automotive, education, companies where that exchange of customer data is a very normal part of the business model. Where it's been a real surprise for us, I think, is especially working with Eagle Eye and other partners, has been consumer goods. I think we've had companies brands that normally would have their entire world is in grocery store checkout land, and so they're starting to generate their own data and their own relationships and connections with customers, which I think is all the other stuff aside, is a really exciting world, I think, as we transition to that. And hospitality and retail, where traditional, you've got those a transaction happens, and it's difficult for those markets to build a relationship with those customers. So I think that's been the biggest surprise, is those verticals. And I think now understanding the value of that customer data and being able to use it in an ethical way for building meaningful relationships with customers. So yeah.
Absolutely, and I think it's really exciting to kind of see that that evolve, and also the innovation of offline and to Maya's point earlier, I think it'll be an exciting sort of journey really to see how this all progresses. And I think just going back to that point of the collaboration, it's not a one size fits all, and if you can do it all, great, but actually if as an industry we can get together and assess what is going to be best for the consumer and how we can help those businesses, I think it's only great. So yeah, very excited to see how that comes along. But yeah, so I just wanted to just take a look at kind of the Q&A and just see what's come in so far. So we've got a question here which is specific to sort of Facebook, Google and LinkedIn. So here what we're seeing is how do you think these particular channels are going to be impacted by the update of third-party cookies? How's that going to change, I suppose, the way you market for your customers?
Yeah, I think in general these changes are going to, reform the digital advertising landscape, and actually more not just even digital, but also moving into traditional above the line formats as well. So I think it's gonna redraw the whole landscape. As I said before, the walled gardens like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google are going to get more of a share of budget, and I think I would be mindful as a marketer to invest too much time and energy into some of the open web stuff, which is going to be very difficult in a world without the third party cookie. And I think that those big platforms, specifically for the question on Facebook, Google, and those platforms, I think I think there's going to be some changes to the targeting that's available. There's going to be some changes to the how you track conversions and those kind of things. But it's going to be a level playing field in that regard, because they are walled gardens, because it's the same for everyone advertising on those platforms. So I think really, as long as you're an advertiser who's doing things in the right way, doing things in an ethical way, and you're looking after data, then actually you shouldn't really see any huge changes or issues with working with those ad platforms. I think you're probably going to end up spending more money on them as the landscape gets redrawn.
I think that also draws back to a point I made earlier as well. Is about it's the efficiency of like making sure that every penny you do spend counts within those walled gardens. So yeah, and sort of powering it behind technology and kind of intelligence to do that as well, which is great. So yeah, another question we've got here, which I think sort of ties back into that really, is what channels do you think will be most impacted, but what does this mean in terms of media cost? So do you sort of have a prediction? I suppose this is a question for you, Maya, as well. Of what's your view on which is going to become the most sort of expensive channel to market in?
I'll jump in there if you don't mind first, Matt, and counter answer the question by saying, building on what Matt said about having to look much more carefully at where you're spending your ad dollars, but actually the cheapest. Not necessarily the cheapest, but I suppose the ad dollars that you spend on your owned audiences and your known customers is probably going to be, one, the easiest to track and attribute, and two, generate the largest return on investment. Your best customers are that for a reason. They're probably responsible for upwards of 40, 50, 60% of your sales. And if you believe in the Pareto rule, it's 80-20, 20% of your customers are responsible for 80%. So my advice would be to look at where the savings are available by giving away only what's essential. And by that, I mean both in terms of the customer data, your first party owned audience customer data that you share with third parties, but also the ad spend that you're diverting to third parties as well. The way that Eagle Eye and Driftwalk work together, we actually work with that first party owned audience data and can expose it from a network perspective to audience partners that also have engaged and owned permissioned audiences. So it's all very trackable, and on top of that, it's also trackable through to a sale, to Matt's point about tracking conversion, how that's going to change. So I don't know if I've answered the question, but I've hopefully given the questioner some ideas about how to better spend their ad dollars going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And actually, to build on that, when you are thinking about, I think you're right as well on that first party. Those first party audiences have always been the most powerful. And I think when you move off the third party cookie, some of the technologies, in traditional ad tech with your GMP, building your cookie pool and matching that to identity, those things are going to get very challenging or impossible to do for those for that part of the market. And so what's inevitably going to happen is all of that, in order to target your own audience, you're going to have to go to the walled gardens who have a large enough identity store in order to run that media. So that is really Google, Amazon, Facebook, and then some of the smaller players like Twitter and Snap and things like that. So who are going to be the new places where you're going to be able to reach that audience. So the rest is going to become much more challenging, I think.
Another question here, what we've got time for, is just how do you think measurement will be impacted, I suppose, in the future again, because we've sort of heavily relied to this question. We've heavily relied on third-party cookies for that tracking and measurement. So what is that going to look like in the future? So Matt, I don't know if you've got an answer for that.
Yeah, sure. I think this is one of the interesting kind of parts that are going to fall out from the third-party cookie going is I think a lot of the reasons why companies like Apple are doing taking measures to lock down the browser is because of things like audience profiling and building these and harvesting personal data, whereas tracking and measurement is something that is still use the same technology today, but it's going to be impacted by those measures. So I think marketers are going to have to rethink how they do measurement, and I think on a technical side of things, I'd be looking at, as a marketer, I'd be looking at things like server-side tracking, so sending offline conversion events or events server-side rather than through the website, pixels and JavaScript. And there's companies like Segment who are doing a really good job of that on the web, and then you've got Eagle Eye Drift Rock are helping with some of the first party data of things like Facebook's offline conversion API and Google's offline conversion API. So look at server side tracking. I think you can expect the conversion window of all tracking through pixels to be down to 7 days now, or even less, maybe even 24 hours. So you have to rethink, I think, how you approach that affects the whole marketing funnel in terms of an open e-commerce site for luxury goods, for example, is actually going to be really challenging because you're going to have people coming back within 1, 2, 3 months who are going to make a purchase, and that's not going to be possible to track through normal JavaScript tracking on the website. So I think those things need rethinking. And even there's a really interesting post by someone called Michael Taylor talks about actually using econometrics and kind of in a really basic way for running some of those studies. So more traditional analysis of for tracking and measurement rather than the kind of modern technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's quite a lot to consider when you take that into effect. Obviously, attribution always being a stickler. I think it's always been a challenge to get that right. So there's obviously a lot of food for thought there to kind of take away as well. So thank you for that, Matt. Another question here, which has come in, which is in relation to loyalty. So can you give examples of new ways of collecting data through loyalty, and any examples you've got from Eagle Eye?
Great question. I think the most important thing to say is I hope it's come across loud and clear in this panel that increasingly consumers are looking for a give to get relationship or a reason to identify themselves. If it's not in order to transact on an e-commerce website, as Matt said, in terms of registering to buy something. I do think it's important to still let people check out as a guest, but obviously the value of tracking that interaction is going to be reduced after this third party phase out. So reverting back to that first party data means you've really got to look at the mechanics of why you're asking for this data, because customers are more aware of it. And I think if you've got a loyalty scheme to the question, you're in a really good position already, because you've already made some of the investment in getting to know your customers, getting to know who your best customers are, and in some kind of value exchange that means that that the relationship and the engagement is ongoing. So you get to build up more of a holistic and historic picture of that particular customer. And also when it comes to, say, grocery schemes, tied to what you buy and when you buy it. So really, really powerful source of data there. And I think the final point I'd make is that underlines and supports that is that those big retailers that already have loyalty schemes are doubling down on them, increasing their investment. Those that didn't have loyalty schemes are launching them. I mean, I think Pret's subscription, Your Barista subscription model that was launched last month, which Eagle Eye is part of. The infrastructure behind that is a really good example, innovative one for the sort of leisure and hospitality business. But Tesco's recently, with their club card, they've introduced almost like personalised discounts, personalised pricing on discounted products, access through your club card. Sainsbury's, they've looked to the gamification route by introducing Live Well for Less, where when you buy healthy products, you get extra points on those. So all in all, they really are trying to double down on making those loyalty schemes as sticky as possible in order to retain their customers, because obviously customer acquisition is going to increase. And it's much easier to retain a known and happy customer than it is to go out and acquire a bunch of new ones. But also that in knowing who those best customers are, it also makes it easier when we partner with the likes of you and Driftrock to go out and find more like them. And in that sense, also address the rising cost of customer acquisition.
No, thank you for that, Maya. That's great. And anything you'd like to add to that, Matt, from your side in terms of loyalty and what you've seen work with your customers, and anything from a kind of offer code or rewards that's worked really well?
Yeah, I think what's interesting for me, having worked with the guy for some years now, I think is this. Seems to me there's a kind of a merger going on between loyalty in the traditional points and rewards piece and CRM, which is going to be just ongoing building a relationship and with your customers. And I think what I've seen is, I think there's a brands who are doing it really well are having through marketing communications, are having conversations with customers in an engaging way, and that could be some rewards and it could be just good content as well. And I think you can come at it from those two different angles, from digital footprint and in lead generation, and then the loyalty programs. And I think they're gonna combine, and I think that's where you get the magic really happens, is really engage very loyal advocates of your brand rather than just people who have signed up to those programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we do incredibly well as well at Peak, is being able to actually inform and kind of predict what the best, the next best action should be for those customers, what offers they're going to be most receptive to, but then ensuring that you're protecting your margin with that as well. So, avoiding that kind of blanket offer and just making sure that you continue that personalization right through from acquisition through to loyalty and then ongoing into the future to increase profitability over all of those valuable customers. So yeah, it's a great partnership, and looking forward to seeing how that progresses, as I mentioned earlier. So thank you. Okay, so I want to hugely thank both of you for joining us today, Maya and Matt. It's been really insightful, and thank you for sharing your views on the sort of death of the third-party cookie and also how we can look to the future to eliminate the sort of gaps that might leave. So yeah, thank you very much, and take care.
Pleasure. Thanks, Anessa.
So we've run out of time today, but thank you all so much for attending our webinar. For those questions which have been submitted, we've not got round to answering. We will follow up shortly on email, so please bear with us. We look forward to speaking soon, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback as well on today. And please feel free to reach out as we're here to help. So before we close off the call, we want to share with you some upcoming events as a part of our Masters of AI event series. We have 3 tracks, and our dev-based track for the developer community will be held in late November. So look out for more information in the coming weeks. But we also have our ensemble, our data science track. And for businesses, we hold our Innovate events that provide an opportunity to introduce the fundamentals of AI to a wider audience in your company. A poll we have popped up on your screen, which will allow you to select any of the events that you could be interested in hearing more about. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.